Hello, this is another video tutorial for instructors. This one is about configuring ethical challenges. And what I've done is, you'll see I'm here at my home page. And what I've done is I've created a demonstration game called Demo Challenges. And I'm going to open that up as a way of showing you how to configure ethical challenges. Uh, I've just created the game right now. There's a previous video that will show you how to do that. I haven't done anything in terms of adding students yet. There are no students who have registered or teams, but that's fine. You can go ahead right away once the game is created and begin to configure ethical challenges for the game. Before we get into how this works and what you need to do to configure ethical challenges, let me just briefly go into the help section and to point out the variety of resources here to help you with ethical challenges. So we have some teaching notes. One's configuring ethical challenges. There are ethical challenges in Deepwater. They're both pretty general. Here's one specifically about ethical challenges from low oil prices. And you'll see that most of the ethical challenges have some sort of teaching note associated with them. But the best way to access the teaching note for individual ethical challenges is to go to the Ethical Challenges tab. And here, each of the challenges that's built into Deepwater is broken out separately. And the help documentation or the supporting memos and emails for that ethical challenge are provided right here, as well as appropriate teaching notes as available. So don't overlook those help resources when it comes to ethical challenges. Okay, let's go back into the demo challenge game, to calendar rounds. And the next point I would like to make is there are two categories of ethical challenges. There are ethical challenges that are already built into the simulation that you can select and apply to individual rounds. There are no ethical challenges that are active by default. You need to select them and apply them to individual rounds or configure individual rounds for an ethical challenge. And you do that here in the ethical challenge column. But also, there are lots of capabilities, configuration settings in Deepwater that allow you to create new ethical challenges. Let's take a pretty straightforward example. Let's go over to the Weather and Oil Price tab. By default, the simulation makes use of real-world weather and real-world oil prices. So even though by default the simulation is tied into real-world oil prices and real-world weather, both the real-world forecast from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the actual values, you can disconnect these. And that allows you, for instance, to throw a hurricane at your students. Now, you don't want to just surprise them with it. You want to make the approaching hurricane as realistic as possible. But look at the ethical challenges that arises from a rig, uh, deep water oil rig operator. When they see a storm beginning to form, let's say off the western coast of Africa. The storm begins to form. It may strengthen. It may head in their direction across the Atlantic. It may get stronger and stronger and head right for them and swerve at the last moment. It might, as it's coming across Florida, um, it might dissipate and lose a lot of its energy. So rig operators in the real world out in the Gulf are faced with the challenge of how long do you wait before you shut in. You don't want to be operating in the midst of a hurricane, but there's always a lot of uncertainty about how strong the storm is, when it will arrive, uh, and that uncertainty presents a real challenge to rig operators. And so you can recreate that challenge by setting weather and forecast in a way to signal an approaching storm, and then you can decide whether that hurricane actually hits or whether it swerves away or dissipates and is not a problem. So that's just one example, one pretty straightforward example. And there are lots of configuration options, as I said, in Deepwater that allow you to do things with uh, enforce expense reduction on, on students by reducing the cap on maintenance spending. You can enforce rules about spending more than a certain minimum. You can increase the floor on maintenance spending. Let's say you imagine there's a new regulation been passed that forces rig operators to spend a certain amount on spending and safety. You can build that in here and write your own memos to support that. So again, there are these two general categories of types of ethical challenges. One, those that are built into the simulation that you can use fairly easily, and those that you can create yourself simply by changing some of the configuration settings in imaginative ways.